Okay, in this video we're going to create the head of the cat. So the first thing I'm going to do, we need to make a new layer. So we're going to open a new layer, double click, we're going to rename the layer as head. And then I'm going to select my oval tool. In this case we're going to draw a circle. And for our colors we want the blue color, that is the body, no stroke. So it'll just be a solid blue circle. I'm going to hold the shift key. That will allow me to draw a perfect circle, and we're going to draw it about the same size as the body for right now. Now, I'm going to select our free transform tool, and we're selecting our circle that we just drew that will turn into the head. Now we're going to make this a symbol, so we're going to do modify, convert to symbol. We want a graphic symbol. Keep our registration in the middle like the other symbols we've done, and the symbol we're simply going to rename as head. And then we'll select OK. Now we're going to go inside of our symbol now, so I'm just going to double click. So here's the head symbol from scene 1. And what we're going to do once we're in this symbol, we're simply going to move this pivot point, or in this case what looks like a white dot. I'm just going to drag it all the way to the bottom, so I'm using my free transform tool. This way when the head moves it'll swing back and forth, so we'll just leave it like that. Now we have one generic layer 1 right here, so we're going to rename that as well. And we're just going to name that skull. And enter. So we have our skull layer, so that is going to mark the blue circle that we just made. Now we're going to create a new layer here. And this layer, we're going to call it near low whisker. And so this layer will be a part of the lower part of the whisker that we see right up here on the image that we use as our reference. So I'm going to select another shape, in this case the rectangle. So I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I want to keep my blue color, I don't want any stroke, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. So we're going to turn this rectangle into our whisker. So we need to reshape this. So I really want to start this off by making a triangle. So I'm just going to pull this corner down, kind of make that nice sharp point out of it, but we want a little bit of a curve to it. So in the middle, I'm hovering, I have my curve tool, and we're just going to curve that just a little. And say we rotate this just a little bit, so with my free transform tool I have my rotation that shows up, and we'll just move it about here. So now looks a little weird, doesn't quite look like we want to, so I may go back to my selection tool and we'll just pull this out a little bit and maybe drag that down so it kind of blends into the rest of the face a little bit more. And then we'll just add a little bit more of a curve, and we'll kind of reshape our point just a little bit. Okay, so that seems to work pretty well. Alright, so we are now, let's get our free transform tool, and we now want to turn this into a symbol. So much like what we did before, modify, convert to symbol, We want the graphic symbol again, we want the registration right there. And this symbol we're going to title whiskers. Alright, so now we have our symbol here. So what we're going to do next is we just want to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to right click, or if you're using the Mac, you can just hold Control, and we're going to click on this layer. And we just want to duplicate the layer. So now we have a copy. Let me get that to show up. So now we have the near low whisker copy layer. And we just want to rename this layer. Let's do near high whisker. So this will be the whisker that is on top. And we'll just get rid of the copy part. There we are. Okay, so we have this duplicated near high whisker. We also have our near low whisker, except I need to be on my near high whisker layer. I'm going to select this. We'll move it up. You can now see there's duplicated whiskers. And we're just going to rotate this just a little bit, make it a little bit different, kind of have it stick out maybe a tiny bit more. There we go. So now we have these two whisker layers. Now we can check to make sure that they move together. So I'm just going to click on my near low whisker because that is the origin of where all of our whiskers will be. Double click, take us into the symbol. I accidentally clicked on the high one, but you can see they move together, even though I'm only selecting the high whisker. Alright, so let's go back to our head layer. Now we're going to use the same technique and step for the other side. So we'll select this near low whisker, and we'll simply duplicate that layer again. And this time we are going to rename the layer far low whisker. We'll get rid of that copy part. Now with this layer selected, I can click this, drag it over. Whoops, wrong one. Drag this over here. Here we go. Now we're going to need to flip it. So in order to do this, I can go to Modify at the top. And let's go to Transform. We're just going to flip this horizontal. And then all we have to do is move this guy into place. You can see I have my alignment on. So with this white line that shows up on the screen, that just tells me that this whisker that I just moved is at the same height as the very low layer whisker. So we'll just leave it there for now. A little bit of a chip sticking out. We'll just scoot him over a little bit. One more time. There we go. Alright. So now we're just going to duplicate the far low whisker. So right click or control click, duplicate layers, and we're going to label this far high whisker. Okay. And like what we did on the near side, we're just going to raise it up. You can see here it's pretty much the same height, but we're going to rotate it maybe just a little. I think we'll rotate this one a little bit too, just to make it a little bit different. Move it around. There we go. Okay, so now I have 4 different whisker layers, and we can check to make sure that all of them are moving. So if I click on my near low whisker layer, all I have to do is double click, takes us into this symbol, and grab our selection tool. Now we have all 4 whiskers that are going to move together at once, because they've all been duplicated and linked. Alright, so let's go back to our head layer. Okay, so now we have all of our whiskers, and we're going to duplicate this layer again, our near low whisker. So right click, duplicate layer, and we're going to rename this near ear. Now with my free transform tool, just going to click, drag it up here. Oh, wrong one. Try that again. And we want to rotate this because it's going to turn into our ear. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger too, so we'll just kind of enlarge it a bit. And we're just going to pop that into place. Sticking out a little bit, we'll just scoot it over. And then we're just going to duplicate this near ear layer. So again, right click, duplicate. We're going to name this far ear. And scoot that over. That gives us our other ear. Rotate that just a touch, make it look a little bit different. Now, if we go back into our near low whisker, and if I double click, try that again. So if I double click, take us into the symbol. Let's see if everything's moving together. There we go. So now my ears, my whiskers are all kind of moving around. So once we get this animated, look like he's kind of bouncing up and down. Okay, let's go back to the head layer. So we're going to create a new layer now. And this one, we're just going to label it features. And with this features layer, let's drag this so it's our very top layer. So features should be at the very top of all your layer listings. Now this time we're going to draw us another circle. So select your oval tool. And our color, we're going to work with a different color now. So let's do our light blue from our swatches. So now we're going to draw, actually I'm going to go back, and I'm just going to double click on this. That way I can double check my face. So I went back to the scene 1, double clicked on my head symbol, took me inside the head, everything else is ghosted, but it'll allow me to kind of check that out as we're working. Okay, so I've got my blue circle. Make sure the swatch color is that lighter blue, which was not the right one. Let's find this one. There we go. And I'm going to create a circle that will look like the face. So on this features layer, hold the shift key, give you that nice perfect circle. And we're going to move that into place, just try and match it up to how we're seeing in the original reference image graphic. Maybe make him just a little bit bigger, not too much. And I'm going to bring this up just a tiny bit. Okay. So this part that'll serve as kind of our basis for the features, we're going to turn it into a symbol. So modify, convert to symbol. And this symbol, we'll just name it features as well. So we want that graphic symbol again as well as the center registration. So we'll leave that all the same and click OK. Now let's go inside this symbol. So we're just going to double click on the light blue circle again. So now we're inside the feature symbol that we just made. And we've got this layer 1. And I think I'm just going to rename it face. Now I'm going to make a new layer, and for this layer we'll just name this near cheek. So we're now looking at the pink circles on the cat's face. So I'm going to draw another circle, and we want that pink color. There we are. So still on the near cheek layer, I'm just going to hold my shift key so I get that nice perfect circle. Select my free transform tool. I'm going to move that over just a bit. Maybe move it over a little bit more. I think that looks pretty good. And we can create a new layer. So this one will be bar cheek. And the cheeks aren't going to move, so that's why I'm not duplicating the layers. I'm just creating a new layer. Now, with my free transform tool, like select this. So this is our near cheek object. So I'm going to copy it, or on a Mac, Command C. And then I'm going to select my far cheek layer, and I'm going to paste it. So Command V. And we'll just move this over a little bit. Now, because of a small amount of foreshortening, I'm going to make this cheek a little bit smaller. Don't want to make it too dramatically small, though. Maybe bring it down just a little bit. Alright, looks good. I'm going to create another layer now, so new layer. This layer is simply going to be mouth. So the mouth is going to be this almost mustache. You could label it mustache as well, almost mustache type line. So I'm going to select my pencil tool right here. And stroke color, we're just going to go with black. And I think I'm going to do a stroke size of roughly 12, whatever size you think will work well. We're going to have a solid line. And the width style, let's do profile 4. And then I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Make it a little bit easier to draw. And so with this width profile, what will happen is that when I draw, it'll start off wide and then it'll taper to a sharp point at the end. So it'll match pretty much what we see in the reference image. So I'm going to undo that. So I want to match this to our reference image. It doesn't have to be exact, but you can see it starts pretty much at the same height as a cheek. So I'll start it roughly there. Just make this swooping line. Maybe a little high. We'll redo that again. There we go. Now, I could redraw this again, but that may be a little tricky. I'm trying to match it. So if I select it, what I just did with my free transform tool, I'm simply going to copy it, or Command C. And I still want to be on my mouth layer. I'm just going to paste it, Command V. Drag this other mouth piece over. Except I want to flip it. Modify, transform, flip horizontal. There we are. Now I can just pull this over. And kind of the same thing with the cheek. It's going to be slightly smaller. In this case, I think I'm just going to pull it in a little bit so it's not nearly as wide. And then the kind of top point of the mouth, and just make sure it kind of looks like it flows into the near side part of the mouth. All right, that looks pretty good. Zoom back out. Okay, now we're going to make a new layer. This is going to be titled Eyes. So we're going to rename this. And we're going to go with our pencil tool again. We're going to stick with black. So let's find our reference image so we can see that. Now, our line type's going to be a little bit different. So instead of width profile 4, which we selected here, I think we'll do profile 6. We can keep stroke 12 or whatever size you're working with. And so I'm just going to create this kind of like crescent moon type shape that's on its side. Almost looks like a smiley face. Make sure you're on your eyes layer. Not too bad, but I can use my free transform tool. We can select it, maybe bring it out just a little. Point I can bring down a little bit, make it a little more like a closed eyelid. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now if we select it again, we can do the same thing that we did with the mouth. I can copy it, Command C, and paste it, Command V. And we'll just drag this over so it's roughly on that same plane. And I do want this to be not quite as wide. So same thing that we did with the mouth and the cheek. Just to drag this in just a tiny bit. Let's zoom out, see how that looks. All right, not too bad. So we're going to go back to our head symbol. So we have all of these different layers that we've worked with so far. And before we get going on our hat, we want to rearrange all of our layers so they're in a working order, because the hat is going to fall between this ear and this ear. We want this ear to cover the hat. We want the hat to cover part of this ear. So we got to make sure we have these layers in a good order first before we do that. So I want my features layer first, or at the top. I'm going to put my near low whisker layer. I'm going to put that second. Then I'll do my near high whisker, so that's where I want it. Let's put our near ear under the near high whisker. Then let's do our skull layer after that. So kind of thing we're looking for. We don't want any weird objects overlapping one another that are hiding anything. And then we'll have far low whisker, far high whisker, and then our far ear layer is going to be the furthest one down, because this ear is going to get covered by the hat that we're going to make. So we're going to hang around in this head symbol with all these different layers. We're going to create a new symbol now. And we're going to let's put this hat at the top. Let's rename this hat crown. So this will be the domed part of the hat. Actually, let's drag this layer. So let's put it between the near ear and the skull layer. Let's put it there. So let's select our oval tool. And we're going to do a little bit with these colors. We're going to change them up just a little bit. So let's draw a black oval. Don't really need a stroke, so we'll just get rid of that. And we're going to draw Just kind of a weird looking oval, maybe like this. We'll reshape it a little bit. So like what we're seeing here, it's going to have almost like a thumbnail type look to it. Make that a little bit bigger. And we can reshape it a little bit, kind of flatten it out maybe. And I'm going to move this down, kind of pop it right on his head. Shape is a little strange. We'll just widen it a little bit. Maybe narrow it a little bit. Looks good enough. Okay, so with this hat crown, I need to add a green band to it. So I'm just going to drag it over here, make it a little bit easier to work with, and let's zoom in just a little bit. So I'm going to select my rectangle tool, and let's go back to our properties. Fill color, we're going to select the green from the reference image that we sampled. We don't want a stroke. And I'm just going to draw a fairly flat rectangle. And I think I'm going to maybe bring this down just a little. Actually, I think what I'm going to do, I don't really want this thing showing too much. It's not a big deal because the brim of the hat will cover it. Oops. Try that again. There we go. There we are. So when you do that, just be careful because if you move this at all, it'll kind of clip out part of the hat. So I've got that green band. Now we're going to convert this part of the hat into a symbol. So I'm going to select all of this hat crown. So it's got the crown of the hat, it's got the band, and we're going to convert that into a symbol. Like I said, modify, convert to symbol, and obviously we'll just label it hat crown, much like the layer. So graphic symbol type, same registration, click OK. So there's our hat crown symbol. And let's go back to our, we are in our head layer. So we're going to create a new layer now. Let's rename this feather. So we want this layer on top of our hat crown. I'm going to select, let's do our pencil tool. And let's select our orange color that we sampled. So this will be our feather. Stroke size 12, we'll start with that. The width, let's do width profile 1. You know, that obviously looks like a feather, so that's probably a pretty good selection. So on this feather layer, I'm just going to make a little swipe. Looks pretty feather-like. I think that works pretty good. And let's select the feather now with our free transform tool. And we will convert this into a symbol. So lots of symbol making here. And let's rename the symbol feather. Hit OK. There we are. So now our feather is a symbol as well. So it looks like this is in a pretty good spot, but if we select everything, we can just move it, kind of pop it into place on this cat's head. Zoom out. Looks okay. There's a little bit of a space of black underneath the band. That's okay. The brim of the hat will cover most of that up. So we're still in our head symbol. We're going to create one more layer. So let's rename this hat brim. Now for the hat brim, we're going to use a different approach. So the hat brim, we're wanting to match up to this kind of like longer, thicker curved line that's going to rest underneath the hat, or rather on top of the hat. And we also want to make sure that the hat brim layer is on top of our feather layer. So I'm going to select my fluid brush tool. So we haven't used this yet. So I'm going to select that. Our color, we want black. And we're going to use several different settings. So I'm going to kick my stroke size up to about 17 or so. Stabilizer, we'll leave it 0. Curve smoothing, I'm going to push that all the way to 100. Roundness 100. Let's take our angle all the way down. And so what this will do, it'll do something like that. Pretty thick though. May need to adjust my stroke size just a tiny bit. Do a little test. Still a little thick. So you may want to do a few test marks just to make sure that the brim isn't huge and it's covering up, too much of the hat or too much of the ears. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to select my hat brim, and let's convert this into a symbol as well. So modify, convert to symbol, rename hat brim, graphic symbol again, hit OK. Now this hat brim, just going to drag it, kind of put it in place here, and adjust it a little bit. So you can see it's covering up part of the feather, it's covering up the lower part of the crown of the hat. Looks pretty good. And that is it for the head. We'll go back to scene 1. Zoom out. So now we have our head for the cat. Thank you for watching.